Rick, are we ready? On your end?
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. And welcome to the December 14th regular meeting of the Township of Montclair Planning Board. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting a copy of the notice on the first floor of the municipal building, excuse me, and by sending copies to the newspaper designated by the township for notices. Electronic notice of this meeting has also been provided by posting a copy of the meeting notice along with the meeting access instructions on the township's website and on the main access door of the municipal building. This meeting is being broadcast live on channel 34 and is streaming live and will be available on demand on YouTube. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning the board exercised powers and procedures resembling that of a court of law. We're obligated to objectively determine facts and to draw conclusions from them in order to provide the basis for official action. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate for a judicial hearing should be maintained at all times. Members of the public will be placed on mute until such time as the meeting is open for public questions or comments. And at that time, the public will be unmuted and they may provide verbal questions or comments as appropriate. If members of the public are having problems connecting to be heard through the system, then we will explore the alternatives of using our chat or our Q&A system. And as a last resort, have Janice Talley, that J Talley, J-T-A-L-L-E-Y, at Montclair, NJUSA.org. Again, that's J Talley at Montclair, NJUSA.org. Questions and comments could be emailed to her to be relayed to the board. Hopefully it won't come to that because, as you can imagine, that would be quite cumbersome. With that, our first thing on our agenda is our roll call, and I am here officially.
Vice Chair Brodock.
And you might.
Nope, I'm here. Try that again. I'm here.
Okay, Mayor Spiller. Mayor Spiller, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I said present. Not sure if you heard me.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Councillor Schlager.
Here.
Miss Willis is trying to connect. I don't think she's here yet. Mr. Rooney.
Here.
Mr. Ian Wally.
Here.
Ms. Lockman.
Here.
Mr. Gilmer.
Here.
Okay. Good.
All right. We don't have any minutes, so we can proceed right to our new business. And the first thing that we will hear is a public hearing on the master plan amendment to the stormwater management plan element.
Okay. Thank you, John. First of all, I just want to remind all board members to mute their microphones unless you're speaking so that we can maintain the quality of the audio. The stormwater management plan was last prepared in 2007 and needs to be revised to reflect new regulations that were adopted by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. This draft stormwater management plan that was submitted to the board members and posted on the township website was prepared by the planning department working in concert with the township engineer. I apologize. The existing plan was adopted in 2005. In March, on March 2nd, 2020, the New Jersey DEP published changes to the stormwater rules. The new rules require that new regulations be in place by March 2nd, 2021 that incorporate green infrastructure requirements for stormwater management. Green infrastructure is a set of stormwater management practices that use or mimic the natural water cycle to capture, filter, absorb, and reuse stormwater, basically reducing the amount of flow into our existing stormwater pipes and into our existing streams by requiring a lot of that stormwater to go back into the ground. It requires developers or development applications to incorporate best management practices into their designs, their site plan designs. And we will expect them to include things like vegetated swales, bioretention, green roofs, cisterns, wet ponds, infiltration basins, and constructed wetlands. So the new stormwater management plan that has been submitted basically replaces the old one. We replaced all the maps and all the figures in the plan with updated maps and figures. We added some new recommendations at the back of it. What you're seeing here on the screen are the changes that were submitted to me by Vice Chair Brodock. Really just some language changes to the plan. I don't think there's anything substantive in the plan.
That's correct.
Right. And getting rid of those extra spaces.
Hey, Jan, this is Tony. I have a quick question.
Sure.
Okay, so does this plan include anything that goes beyond the new DEP rule?
Yes, it does.
Okay, what is over and above what the state requires?
Okay, if you go, I'm on page 19.
Okay.
And starting on this page, we've added regulations for minor development. The state regulations allow municipalities to require that minor development, which is anything that's not major development, according to the definition here, to embrace green infrastructure, but it doesn't require them to do it. So we've added that into our regulations that minor development, which is any development that results in an increase in impervious surface of 250 or more square feet, be required to provide a portion of their stormwater management through green infrastructure. So that's where we've deviated and gone above and beyond what the state requires for other projects. That's the biggest one. These other items, what we took the recommended standards that are in this redevelopment in the stormwater management plan came out of the model ordinance that was promulgated by the Stormwater Management Institute.
So what tips the scale for minor again? Disturbance of 250, or is it net disturbance? Is it net disturbance?
It's just an increase in impervious surface of 250.
Okay, so it's net. Okay, so if there's 250 square feet, so like a 10 by 25 foot area, if you pave that, then you have to slow the water down off your site basically. So
right.
You put some sort of swale or something.
I mean, it doesn't mean that this will actually come to the board for approval, because something that small doesn't trigger site plan. It just means that it has to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. And what is the state? What is the area that triggers it for the state?
It's major development. The definition that you see on the screen here for major development, that's the trigger right now. So it's
What are-
disturbance of 1/2 acre, or Keith, is there somebody else who wanted to speak? Anyway, so it's the creation of 1/4 acre or more of impervious surface. The creation of 1/4 acre or more of, actually, this should say acre here. We're missing a word. Of regulated motor vehicle surface since 2021, or the combination of the two. So it anytime, if you have small additions that are less than that, anytime that the total equals 1/4 acre, that triggers a stormwater management
So the
requirement.
state regs, and you explained this before, the state regs are cumulative, right, since 2004?
Right.
Is
Yes.
the 250 cumulative, or is it as of a specific date?
The 250 would be at any point in time. I don't think you could, for minor development, that's
Yeah.
so minor. For 250 square feet, I don't think you can track that. We wouldn't really have a means of being able to track that.
Let's say you could, when would it start?
As of the date of the adoption of the regulation.
So the major stuff is retroactive to 04,
Right.
but anything 250 or above starts now because
Exactly.
and the
That's
rationale
all
is that,
new.
yeah. Well, how is our engineer? Do we have our engineer on?
We have the board engineer here, David Battaglia. He's very familiar with these regulations. I invited the township engineer, but he was not available to come this evening.
Okay. Would you mind if we just hear from him? Is it okay?
Sure.
Go ahead, Tony. Did you have a question?
Well, yeah, why don't you gauge it in terms of the, how do you feel about 250 being the amount that would require green infrastructure? I mean, when I look at the major development, we're talking about 1/4 acre, albeit it is retroactive since 04, that's 20-some thousand square feet. This is 250 square feet. So there seems to be, quite a difference between the definition of major and minor, and I would like your opinion on that.
Okay. I mean, it's really something that is dependent on how the municipality wants to operate. That's one of the reasons why the state has given each municipality the latitude to make the requirements more stringent. I would suggest that certain types of green infrastructure are probably not suitable for 250 square feet. But something like a small rain garden, which I know a lot of residential homeowners are putting in these days, that would certainly be applicable. So I think it's okay for you to be very broad in saying that green infrastructure is required for 250 square feet, and then you have to, on a case-by-case basis, decide exactly what green infrastructure would be appropriate. And that would really be up to the applicant. More often than not, they're going to pick some kind of rain garden or that kind of size. I can see
If someone put like a 17 by 17 patio, wants to put a patio out, are there any proportions for how much of your particular lot? Let's say, for example, that someone has this enormous lot and a small house, and they just want to put a little patio. So on balance, their entire property is very green because they have lots of impervious surface on their ground. Yet we have another house which is almost totally paved, and they put the same 250. How do you square up the two?
There's not really any way to square up the two. I mean, it's either in the ordinance or not, and each homeowner would be required to abide by it if they were to increase.
Would you think that having a percentage of coverage on a particular lot might be something that we could consider?
Certainly.
So I was thinking, maybe it's kind of relative to how much green you already have on the property.
That would make sense if that's the way the board felt about it. Yeah. Okay. And you could do that within the rules.
I'm just kind of throwing it out there. I don't really, because I don't really have any experience. This is a new law, so I don't know 250 seems small to me, but, and listen, I'm all in favor of green infrastructure. I think it's awesome. I think the flooding we have is awful. I'm in favor of doing anything to prevent that, but, you know, as long as there's kind of a balance in terms of what the, you know, what the town has to regulate.
You want it to be equitable between different residents, of course, yeah.
That's all I have.
David, could you know, under the proposed ordinance that we have here, I mean, could a homeowner who was putting in that 17 by 17 patio, could they put a, you know, rain barrel at their downspout? Would that qualify as an offset?
That could, yeah. As long as it's capturing the right amount, all right, the right volume, that would certainly offset. Frankly, I have rain barrels at my own house. They work quite well.
Right.
So that's certainly an option for at least for
So
summertime.
Right, and well, it doesn't necessarily mean there has to be a big construction project that occurs. You know, I mean, rain
No.
gardens aren't that big of a construction project. But if somebody said, you know, I don't want to put in that swale or, you know, a little rain garden in the back, they could, you know, frankly, purchase a rain barrel. And I know the township at one point was selling them at cost. I'm not sure if they do that anymore, and just attach it to a downspout, and they've got it covered if it meets the right volume definition, right?
Correct.
So my guess is that not a lot of people know about this in town. That's my guess, because this is like, you got to be a nerd to go into this, right? So should it be more open to people that might have a concern, or do we want to? I really don't know. I mean, it just seems like if we get in this situation where people are all pissed off because, you know, who passed this law, right? I'm just saying.
Tony, this is the first
We're
step.
not passing the law.
Yeah.
Right.
We're saying that we're recommending that the master plan, you know, aren't we saying that any development that results in more than 250 square feet of disturbance is requires green infrastructure?
We're recommending that.
Oh, well, that's like the same thing, though.
It's what the council will ultimately, this is going to be transferred into an ordinance.
Okay. Well, I guess where I'm coming out is I don't have any reference for where this sits in the real world. I don't really know. Like, is 250 the right number? Is 1,000? You know, I just don't know what burden this will place on. I don't even know how much this will really help the problem that we have. I mean, how much would this do? Again, just a bunch of questions. I apologize. I just don't, you know.
I think from my perspective, what this will do is it'll give us a tool that we currently don't have.
Okay.
To where problems may occur, to address it proactively.
Okay.
Without it, we don't have the ability to ask for these types of infrastructure improvements.
But it does go way beyond the new state law, right?
Yeah, currently state law is 1/4 of an acre, which is what, basically 7,500 square feet? 10,000 square feet, I'm sorry, 10,000 square feet. So we're a lot more stringent than that.
Mm-hmm. So that makes me a little nervous, but again, I don't know. I mean, maybe it makes sense to have, I mean, who is the engineer that's going to be represent, who's going to look at all this stuff? Should we have that department? And we used to have Kim Kraft, right?
Well, this was reviewed by the township engineer.
Oh, it was?
So, right,
Okay.
It was not done in a vacuum.
Oh.
So he's aware of it.
Okay.
And in fact, I sent to him the draft plan, and he had some comments. We've made changes to the draft plan to reflect his concerns. So.
Okay, thanks.
So I have a question. I see in the plan there's a discouragement about using artificial turf and gravel. So I have a real life example, and I don't know really where it fits into this. So someone on my block has taken away the lawn and put in artificial turf in maybe it might be 25 feet by 30 feet lawn in the front of their house. And then they've tipped that off with gravel, a strip of gravel that touches the sidewalk. And there's no ordinance against being able to do that. Yet, by putting in this artificial turf, and he may also put it in the backyard, I'm not sure. That's made that what was lawn now impervious surface, and the gravel, which is right by the sidewalk, does drift into the sidewalk. And I see in this ordinance proposed that that gravel then ultimately can fall into the street and clog up sewers. So I don't see that particular real life problem is addressed in this ordinance. And in a worst case situation, I think of someone who is on, say, Upper Mountain Avenue with one of those beautiful lawns, being able to take up all that lawn and put in artificial turf and gravel. I mean, I don't think they would do it, but I really didn't think my neighbor would do this either on his house. So I think it's a real life problem that exists with an example, yet I don't think that kind of thing is addressed in this, and I think it should be, and I don't know, I'm seeking your opinion as well.
I can answer that because I know a little bit about it. Most artificial turf is permeable. So it might be more of a, design issue, but
Aesthetic, yeah.
you see those fields out there, the water doesn't run off the field, it goes through the turf into the ground. I mean,
Well,
it might be able to.
Mm-hmm. It does say in here that artificial turf is discouraged. I don't know, on page 19. So I mean, is that something that we're concerned about? I am concerned about it from an aesthetic point of view, but looking through this, I thought maybe I would pick this up. So from the storm management point of view, because I don't think it should be allowed in our town ordinances that people could put gravel instead of lawn, or artificial turf instead of lawn. And I think honestly that if this were done on a high-end house in town, the neighbors would be all over it. But that's not where I live.
May I ask, Carmel, where are you reading that?
Guess I saw on, so page 19, low impact development techniques.
Where it says minimizing turf grass lawns?
Yeah.
I do not believe that is referencing artificial turf.
Oh, okay. I was thinking turf. Okay.
Yeah, that is not, I do not believe they would be referencing that in here. I think when they say minimizing turf, they generally just don't like grass. They would rather see other types of vegetation that slow water down much better, like wildflowers or something like that.
Well, then on page 18, it does affirmatively states recommended that this exception permitting use of gravel be rescinded. I know that's talking about driveways.
Mm-hmm.
That's really just driveways.
But still, it's saying, but this gravel also washes in. It's just because it's not in the driveway doesn't mean it doesn't wash. It's on a little slope and it washes onto the sidewalk and then it washes into the street.
I mean, I think a lot of people use gravel as a landscaping element. I think we would be hard, and we see it all the time. It's part of a landscaping plan. Parts of it are gravel. I think we would be hard pressed to remove that.
Well, that's actually what this says here. It says it is further recommended that the exception permitting use of gravel be rescinded. So the suggestion here on page 18 under number 2, modify Article 17, is to rescind the use of gravel, which is currently permitted.
Right, as a driveway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as a driveway, but certainly it's even more offensive as a lawn element. It has no real functional use as a lawn, except the person who, and a lot of these houses near me are, landlords who don't live in town or live in the house. They're just trying to minimize their expenses and maximize their return so they don't have to pay for a landscaper to mow the lawn all the time. So they put in this artificial turf and this gravel. with no, thought for the aesthetics of the neighborhood.
I think that's, Carmel, I have to say, I think that's a separate issue from stormwater management.
Okay, but I thought I'd bring it out because I wasn't sure Tony, he educated me. I didn't know that
Right.
artificial turf allows the water to permeate in it. So now I know that. So maybe I agree with you. It's not a stormwater management
Yeah,
issue.
I guess that the exception to using gravel, the way I read this, is that if the gravel washes into the roadway, then it's bad. But if the gravel doesn't go anywhere, it's very porous, it's good. So, the assumption here is that all the gravel that's put down is going to wash into the roadway. Suppose your property slopes toward the rear. Then this doesn't really work. And this exception is probably, just fundamentally, since gravel's porous, it's better fundamentally than a asphalt driveway.
I think that came, again, Tony, I think that came straight from, there is a problem with gravel driveways because they do require maintenance. No matter where the gravel driveway is, the gravel moves.
Oh, okay.
And I think that was a concern, particularly from the township, about cleaning up from gravel driveways.
Oh, okay. So it's nothing to do with, okay, got it. It's more of a maintenance issue that got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So, just going
Well,
through
since I'm
the,
talking about it, so if I just may finish up. All right, so I hear your point. My example doesn't work in this particular ordinance proposal, but I feel like there should be some ordinance that addresses people turning their lawns into artificial turf or gravel. And I'm just suggesting that that's something we may want to think about working on in the future.
I hear you. And that might be something that would be appropriate under property maintenance.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from the board, from board members on the amendment to the stormwater management plan?
I actually do. Getting back to Tony's point earlier, do you have any sense, Janice, of the township engineer's position on the 250 square feet? And the reason I ask the question like that is because if this would be ultimately presented to the governing body for adoption, and at least part of it as an ordinance, he may recommend the 250 or he may recommend a different number. So I was just curious whether you'd gotten any feedback from him as to what might be recommended to the council.
Okay, I sent him the draft plan. He gave me his changes. He kept the 250 in. So I assume since he kept it in that he didn't have a problem with it.
Therefore, we'll recommend that to the governing body. Okay.
Right.
Well, just because he didn't affirm it doesn't mean that he didn't miss it. So here's my position. If he says he's cool with it, then that's the one thing that stood out to me anyway. Not that I know anything about this, but it's like 250 seems small. I don't know. I just wouldn't want to create a big burden for people at the same time as obviously we need to comply with the new law and so forth. So it's too bad he's not on the phone now, not on the call now.
If I could give a frame of reference for the 250, I was once the assistant borough engineer for a community up in northern Bergen County. And even 20 years ago, they had a requirement for seepage pits, 600-gallon seepage pit for any construction over 100 square feet, which would be far stricter than what you're proposing. And that was about 20 years ago.
Where is that, Bergen County?
Allendale.
They have steep slopes there, or is it flat or what?
Wasn't a steep slope situation, nope.
Okay, well, that's all right. That's good enough.
I don't know that that's what it is now. I haven't been there in a long time, but back then, that's what it was.
Janice?
Yeah.
I had just one more suggestion.
Okay.
If we're moving on from this point, are we, or?
Well, we're still on this plan, but yeah.
No. Okay. So my suggestion is, I think you need to have some of the streets in Montclair mentioned in some of these maps. It's hard to figure out exactly where you're referencing.
I think if we did that, the maps would be almost impossible to read.
If you just had some of the main streets, so you could get some kind of reference.
Okay.
For
I'll
example,
work
I was
with-
trying to figure out where there, there's that area, I think is in the Oak Crust section, that, people have been complaining recently about excessive flooding with the least amount of rain falling. And I was just trying to figure out where that was. And, it's hard to do that. So if you put like Watchung Avenue, Bloomfield Avenue, whatever the main streets are, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
Carmel, you're just saying like even 5 or 6, kind of how we have the train there, very visible and clear to see as a marker, just 3 or 4 other main markers
exactly.
like that. Yeah.
Okay. We can do that. Are there any other comments from the board? If not, I think we probably need to open this up to the public. And what I'll do is I'm going to make all right. Rick, I made you the host. Everybody. Well, I think I don't know. We have all these people here for the public. I don't know who wants to speak. I think Susan Aptman raised a hand. Maybe she wants to speak.
And do you want to explain to everybody, Janice, how people can connect their audio before we start opening it up so people can get ready to do that?
I think what we'll have to do is, because I can't tell from who's here, who wants to speak on this application, on this plan, as opposed to the other plan. So at this point, because we're opening it up to the public, what I think we would like to have, if you can raise a hand or put an exclamation point to somehow notify us that you want to speak, please do that. I think people on the phone might not be able to do that. And Rick, you'll have to unmute them individually and ask them if they want to make any comment. When you do get unmuted, you will then have to, the members of the public, will have to enable your audio so that we can hear you. You'll have to turn on your audio.
Yeah, I think if you're on the WebEx platform, members of the public, right now, I think at the bottom of your screen, it'll say audio broadcast, and maybe that's lit, and maybe there are or are not other buttons. But if I remember correctly, when you are later unmuted, it gives you an option to connect audio. And so when you connect the audio, it'll ask you, what speakers do you want to use and maybe what microphone you'd like to use. So you'll have to select that. Once that connects, you'll then be able to provide your comment. Perfect. Thank you, Rick. I know that's been a stumbling block in the past for some of our members of the public, is trying to actually get it all connected. So I appreciate you giving them a little extra time to do that. And Janice, John, do we need name and address for the public comment here, or Arthur?
Yes.
Okay. So when you're unmuted and you get a chance to speak, if you could please provide your name and address, and then go forward with your comments. So Suzanne.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Suzanne Atman, 120 Westview Road. And just so you know where I found the hand up, on the bottom, it says participants, the bottom right. If you click on participants, a list will appear and you'll see your name as a public speaker. And then you can just click the little hand button next to your name. So in case you were looking for it. I'm representing the Montclair Environmental Commission this evening. And so the state now requiring these more objective standards around stormwater management is critical and long overdue. So we thank you for considering these requirements so thoroughly and adding regulations to strengthen it, especially around minor development. In a steep sloped, flood-prone, stream-surrounded town like Montclair, these regulations become even more important for reducing water quality and increasing, for reducing water quantity and increasing water quality. I just want to comment on a few pieces of the plan for your consideration. First of all, instead of widening culverts or in addition to as one solution, can we look at the practice of daylighting streams in areas that surround flood zones? Stream daylighting is a practice that has been part of several downtown revitalization and redevelopment projects in areas with declining tax revenue. And when streams are daylighted and greener spaces restored, the areas become rejuvenated, property values increase, properties previously in a floodplain are no longer, and municipalities are in many cases able to pay off bonds early. That has been published. The water quality is improved along with many other net positive results for the community, such as additional open space. A second point I wanted to make, can you prioritize or rank order the green infrastructure and low impact technique options that are listed in the plan based on their ecological value, thereby encouraging developers and others in both the major and the minor development to attempt these more higher ecologically valued techniques first and where possible? So beyond the value of stormwater runoff filtration, we could potentially include carbon absorption, protection of beneficial insects and birds as inputs in defining ecological value measures. And for minor development, this would be important as well. A third, could you be more specific in defining native vegetation in the low impact green infrastructure section so that plantings and designs with the highest ecological value are implemented? Could you actually include a list of plants, shrubs, trees, as well as native nurseries for sourcing that are recommended for this climate zone and that provide the highest ecological value beyond stormwater runoff protection? In the past, I personally have seen impervious areas replaced during redevelopment with vegetation that is ornamental or non-native, boxwoods being an example. But there are so many options nowadays for native plantings that are of high ecological value and that are aesthetically pleasing as well. It does take some deliberate planning to commit to this. So with this clear guidance, without this clear guidance, I'm concerned people will take the path of least resistance and the wrong plants and designs might be chosen. Also, in the development areas where trees are dense and considered wooded areas, separate from our private tree ordinance, can you clearly define wooded area and require that the ecological value of tearing down these trees be measured? And then require new native plantings on the property of equal ecological value or at least within a range? The plan states that the water quality standard will not apply to impervious surfaces that are not used by vehicles. I'm just wondering if we're missing an opportunity here in impervious pedestrian areas that can lead to runoff. Two more. Can we include an optimal measures section covers non-residential open spaces surrounding ponds and streams and addresses flooding and sediment runoff? For example, at Edgemonte Park during a storm, water rushes down the slope into the pond at a very fast rate. And this is because the land surrounding the ponds is sloped. It's made of compacted soil and grass. This then, of course, leads to erosion, sedimentation, algae buildup, and impacts on fish and aquatic life. We saw this algae buildup at Yantakah this summer and questioned how much of it was due to flooding. As a best practice, could we create this OM section to require the building of vegetative riparian buffers of the required width around these ponds to slow the flow and filter the solution. That's one highly recommended solution by many institutions. And then finally, can we measure the impact of these stormwater management changes on water quantity and water quality, both drinking water and water bodies, so we know what's working? The Environmental Commission is happy to support you in research and further defining these amendments if you so please. Thank you.
Rick, is that just the first 3 digits of the phone number? First 6, okay. Just so everybody knows. And does that call-in user need to do anything specific or just start talking when you call on them?
Rick, just a note, you won't be able to unmute someone. You can give the permission and they do have to unmute themselves. You can't forcibly unmute someone. So just a note on that.
So if they're not unmuting, then I guess we can take it if they don't want to speak.
Well, how do they unmute themselves on the phone? That's what I guess that would be my question. I understand when you're on the computer, you're on a cell phone app, but when you're just dialing in the phone number, which is what I think the call-in users are, is there something that they need to press, you know, I don't know, *6 or something like that for other conference lines?
Rick, you might be, I've had it work in the past where I click the audio panel and then unmute them all. And that way, if somebody wants to speak, they can unmute themselves, but you have to click on the audio panel and then unmute them.
Hello.
Okay. Oh, that's how we hear those voices. Okay.
Hello.
I heard a hello.
Well, that's William Scott. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Scott, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
Can you speak up?
This is William Scott. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Too.
If you can talk a little louder, that would be good, but we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yes. I have a question about the maximum impervious surface standards for all zones. You could probably use a couple of examples of recently built projects in the R1 zone. Say, for instance, the Lewis property. How would that new provision impact that type of a development? And also, there were two-family houses built on Washington Street recently, which were very small lots. and how would that provision have affected that type of a project? So we need to use some real world data that we've done recent projects in the township, how these new provisions would apply.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then one other request would be from a mapping standpoint, you could at least put the ward indications in the maps so people would get a little bit of an idea of not only if the streets are missing, at least what wards you're referring to in some of these maps that you're creating newly.
Yeah.
But I would definitely like to get an answer on the max impervious surface situation. I think that Tony hit upon some pretty good points. You know, you've decreased that by 500%, 1,000%. I mean, that's a major decrease in that type of a requirement.
William, I hear your recommendation. I don't have an answer for that. I can't tell you how it would have impacted those projects. It's simply a recommendation in this plan to add to our current zoning ordinance.
I understand that the purpose of an example would give you some idea going forward how these new provisions would affect certain lot sizes. Especially when you're building a 3,000 square foot house or a 1,500 square foot house.
Okay, that's something we could certainly take into consideration when we work on the zoning ordinance changes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else on the phone would like to be heard? Everyone's muted, right? Okay, well, it doesn't sound like we're getting a lot of response from it, and
Okay, are you ready to close the public portion then?
yes, I would suggest that we close the public portion. And the Environmental Commission presented quite the list of things to consider. I, for one, would like some time to go back over the recommendations. There seem to be some valid points that needed to be considered. And unfortunately, my expertise in this area is limited. So I would like to have some time to consider them and to discuss those points with some people who have a little bit more knowledge. And, you know, particularly members of our board. I know that we have it preserved in the record of this. And since we're dealing with unusual circumstances, if the commission has that laundry list in a written form, it would be good if you could email that to Janice, and then she could distribute it to the board, you know, for further consideration. What does the rest of the board think about that?
I would like to say something even better. It might be if they looked at the document in Word format and just propose some edits that address the list that they have. That's much easier for us to read that as part, if their list is part of the document itself.
That's a good point. They did offer their assistance and input, and that's putting a little bit of work on them, but I would, I think we would all be grateful if we could receive their comments that way.
My suggestion would be to continue the public hearing on this master plan to the January 25th Planning Board meeting. And hopefully at that meeting, we can have the additional information from the Environmental Commission for the board to consider.
I saw a message pop up in the chat from Suzanne saying absolutely. So let's do that. Let's adjourn this. And if there are people who are online, and I'm throwing this out there as a precaution because there's just this element of unknown, but if there are people who wanted to be heard this evening, but for some reason had technical challenges and could not be heard, then if they can get in contact with Janice and so advise them so that we can take steps to maybe address that, since we're going to continue the meeting and find a way so that they can be heard.
I got one more request for Janice, is Tony. And I don't know this. I know that if you build a deck on your house, you need a permit. I don't think you need a permit for a patio. At least I didn't see it recently if you're doing some landscaping. So I guess if we talk about enforceability, if someone can add 250 square feet of impervious surface without actually having to apply for some sort of permit, it might be, a big loophole that could be driven through with respect to it. Now, again, it may require a permit. I just don't know.
Tony, it probably requires a zoning permit.
Because you're increasing the percentage of impervious surface.
It requires a zoning permit to make sure that it meets the setback requirements.
So any patio. Okay, got it. Okay.
Okay.
Janice, if we continue this to January 23rd, does that give the council enough time to prepare the ordinances, first reading, second reading, by, what was it? Was it March 1st is the deadline?
It's March 2nd. And yes, that's cutting it very close because they have to have it discussed, introduced, adopted, and in place by March 2nd. So that's why I wanted to get the master plan adopted this year.
Yeah, I understand. Maybe I was wondering if earlier in January might be better, but I defer to Councilor Schlager and Mayor Spiller if they have any opinions on that.
If we, all I can say is if we wait until January, doesn't matter. It won't get onto the council agenda until February, and there's no way it could be adopted by March. So I think that the council would have to move forward with their ordinance without the benefit of an adopted master plan element, because that has to be discussed by the council in January.
So if that's the case, then as a practical matter, we really can't wait.
You can always do it, but you're going to lose the ability to give guidance to the council as they work on the zoning ordinance, the ordinance change.
Janice, what's the downside to the township if we don't adopt, if the governing body doesn't adopt time?
I don't know what the ramifications are. Everything that I've read said that the municipalities have to have these ordinances in place by March 2nd. David, maybe David can answer that better.
I am honestly not sure what the ramifications are. What I can tell you is that I was at an NJDEP seminar for this 2 weeks ago. I specifically asked them if there would be any latitude, especially given the COVID situation, if there would be any latitude to extending the March 2nd deadline, and I was given a very abrupt no. But I don't know what the ramifications would be. I guess ramifications would be whatever it normally is for disobeying a state directive.
Yeah, but you could just get in place what the state requires, because we have to do that anyway.
Yes.
And then the extra stuff can wait.
But if you're going to do, you can, but if you're going to do it, you don't want to do it twice.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just in case, you can make the deadline.
But what you're saying,
That's what I
Dan,
was going to say.
we have to make a determination this evening.
Right. We could always adopt this plan because we have been working on it for the past couple months in its present form. If we want to amend it to include the additional items that were identified by the Environmental Commission, we can go back and amend it and add it at that time.
That's
But at
what
least
Tony's suggesting, right, Tony?
well, he was suggesting wait on the plan, but moving forward with the ordinance. I think it's more important to move forward.
Yeah, I think my initial suggestion is I would like to vote on this with more input. I'm kind of in alignment with, it might have been William Scott or it might have been someone else, but I don't have any frame of reference as to whether 250 is the right number or not. And I apologize. I'm kind of in this business, but I just don't know. I really don't know. Are we, are a lot of towns going at 2,000 feet? And I wouldn't feel comfortable saying, yeah, 250 is the number, I recommend that. I just don't have the information. Or John was kind of saying that too, I guess. And that's just me. I'm not, you guys do,
Well, if I'm understanding the feedback that we've gotten, aside from that 250 issue, there hasn't been any feedback against what we have. It's been more for in addition to.
Right.
Is that what I'm understanding from everyone? So if we're facing a time crunch where we've got to do something this evening, then I would suggest that we move forward with what we have, and then we put it on our agenda to consider the additional items and supply that to the council as soon as possible, so that those additional items and the 250 issue we'll have time to consider that also. But it doesn't sound like we have a choice. We have to do something this evening if the council is going to have the benefit of any guidance from us for the process. And so we have to give them what we can give them. And I wish we had some of the comments before, but we have to deal with what we have to deal on in front of us right now. So, and if it means that we have to take a couple of extra steps on the back end, then so be it. How does the rest of the board feel about that?
I agree with that.
Makes sense.
Yes, I would agree with that as well.
I was just wondering,
Carol.
when did
That was, yes.
when did the environmental people get to look at this? Were they part of the process all along, or just this last week or so?
I didn't send it to the Environmental Commission for particular feedback. I sent it to the Master Plan Subcommittee and the Township Engineer. But it has been on the website for about 3 weeks, so it's been available for review.
Yeah, and I can say as a member of the commission that they had their meeting on the 2nd of December, and so I raised it with the commission that this meeting was occurring, and a couple of members said we would like to comment on that. So they didn't really have a whole lot of time. Really, it was the beginning of December.
Right. Well, we'll have to do better next time. There's nothing that we can do to undo what's already done, and so it would be my motion that we adopt the plan as edited by our vice chair, and that we, and alongside of that, that we have this on the agenda in January to make suggestions and additions that we can communicate to the council as soon as possible thereafter, after that meeting, so that they can get, you know, as much guidance from us beforehand, and then see what we have to do on the back end to clean it up. Because by our January meeting, they'll be in the process, but I don't know how much giving them additional information while they're in the process they'll be able to do with it. So we may have to make some formal recommendations after that. But I think that's the best that we can do this evening. So that's my motion, that we adopt the changes as edited, and that we take the additional steps as necessary to consider the feedback that we've gotten this evening.
I second.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Brodock,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Councillor Schlager,
Yes.
Miss Willis,
Yes.
Mr. Rooney,
Yes.
Mr. Ian Wally,
Yes.
and Miss Bachman,
Yes.
and Mr. Gilmer.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. That allows us now to go back to the previous matter on our agenda, and that's the master plan amendment to the Unified Land Use and Circulation Plan.
So this public hearing is to amend the Unified Land Use and Circulation element of the master plan to reference the Safe, Complete Streets implementation plan. The planning board has discussed this matter at a number of meetings and came to the conclusion that there's a lot of information, useful information in the Safe Complete Streets implementation plan, but that it has to be carefully crafted the master plan has to be carefully crafted to identify how that plan should be used. And really, the board recommends that the plan be used as a design guide to come up with suggestions on how to make improvements to our streets to make them safer, not as a implementation plan, which carries a lot more weight than a design guide. A design guide is expected to be flexible, so it can be used to reflect the different qualities of the different streets in the township. So the plan in front of you is the pages from our land use and circulation plan. What I've brought up are the plans that include the latest changes from Vice Chair Brodock, as well as other members of the board. And really what this references is the fact that it's going to be used as a design guide and not a plan, really a reference tool for ideas on how to make our streets safer. We did talk about perhaps changing the title of the Safe Complete Streets implementation plan, but the state of New Jersey funded the work and the consultants to prepare that plan. And if we changed any of the contents of that plan, we would then have to take off the name of the state of New Jersey and all the consultants who worked on it, because they wouldn't grant us permission to change that plan since it's a product of the state. So that's why we've been very careful in our master plan to explain its use as a design guide and not an implementation plan without changing the title of it. So if you can see here, this doesn't show the changes to the existing plan. This shows the changes to the plan that I received today from various members of the planning board. And really, it's this section here about the street design guide, where we talk about how the township received the grant. We're calling it a design guide. Provides a variety of design options for different street typologies. The intent is to use it as a reference for making improvements to our streets. And that the design guide should be evaluated. The options should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Proposals for street improvements that incorporate bicycle and pedestrian enhancements must be weighed against existing conditions, including but not limited to safety, convenience, and parking considerations. And the final statement was that the design guide does not adequately address the policy issues of other street users, including electric bikes and joggers. So essentially, this is what the amendment to the circulation plans, land use and circulation plan includes. I don't know if the board members have any questions.
I just have one point for clarity. I believe we discussed including up to page 39 of the Montclair Safe Complete Streets Implementation Plan and not including all the appendices. Is that correct?
I don't know how you can take, the appendices are part of the whole project.
Okay, we did discuss that at one point. I'm just trying to be clear.
No, at one point we had discussed, that is true. And I think to Janice's point, checking with the different agencies, if we had made that alteration, we'd have to go back to them. They may want the seals removed. And so, so we still, the bulk of it is still those core pages, but I think we referenced the whole thing the way that it's written now.
That's fine. That's why I just pointed out, it's just for clarity, so we all know what we're talking about here. Thank you.
Are there any further questions or issues that the board would like to put on the table concerning the proposal? If not, can we open it up to the public once again? Comment?
Oh, John, just one final thing. I did send around the letter that we got from the police, from the Lieutenant Ignazzo from the police department. Did you get a copy of that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I did receive a letter today from the police department in support of this change, which I did send to all the planning board members. I don't know if you want me to read it, but it does basically, it states that the police is in support of this document and this amendment.
And Chair, just with the individual, Montclair Police Department, and I was just scrolling to the bottom. So the Lieutenant Traffic Bureau Commander was also involved in the complete crafting of it. It may be worthwhile to read the letter, or at least maybe project it on the screen. I don't know.
I have it here.
I would suggest that you read it. I came on just to make that, I support that, what Daniel just said, that it would be helpful to read it so that the public could hear what the statement is.
Okay, then let me read it into the record. This is from the Montclair Police Department. Dear Mayor, Town Council, and members of the Planning Board. Unfortunately, I am unable to attend the public hearing this evening to provide comment from a traffic safety perspective with regards to the Safe Streets proposal to be adopted as part of the master plan for the Township of Montclair. Please let this letter serve as the Montclair Police Department's position to support incorporating the Safe Streets Plan into the master plan with new development and street improvements going forward. Montclair has always been at the forefront when it comes to traffic safety, having been the first township in the state to adopt a complete streets policy in 2009. As Traffic Bureau Commander for the Police Department for the last 10 years, I have received and continue to receive complaints regularly about how difficult it is to simply cross the street as a pedestrian or be able to bicycle safely around town. We encourage biking and walking to school for children, but how can we do this if we are not providing them with the best and safest means to do it? As a member of the steering committee for Safe Streets upon inception, I had an opportunity to work alongside and with many stakeholders and outstanding resources we were fortunate enough to have provided through funding from the New Jersey Department of Transportation. The end product of the extensive hours of studies and meetings to collaborate information resulted in a manual that provides the township with numerous options to improve road design and ultimately make the streets safer for all road users. When looking to improve traffic conditions, we often resort back to the 3 E's of traffic safety: enforcement, education, and engineering. Despite our best enforcement and educational efforts, it cannot be done on enforcement or education alone. While each component is important, addressing traffic safety issues requires the combination of all 3 elements to be successful and provide measurable results. The ultimate goal in changing road design is not only to improve and ultimately change driver, pedestrian, and bicyclist behavior, but to change their behavior by design when the police cannot be there to enforce it. It is through this engineering component that the Safe Streets Plan can provide traffic calming options, depending on the characteristics of each roadway to make motorists more aware of the other road users in town. Montclair has made so many changes in the last several years. We must be sure to make the appropriate changes that are all-encompassing to make sure that the streets of Montclair truly are for everyone. Thank you in advance for the opportunity to speak to this issue. Respectfully, Lieutenant Stephanie Ignazzo.
Okay, good.
Thank you. I just want to say, Mr. Chair, thank you as also. Thank you, Janice, for reading that in and having reviewed that earlier. I want to thank her for the perspective of the police. I know that this is an issue that this body has been looking at for quite some time. I thank everyone for their efforts and certainly watching some of that from the town council perspective. It's appreciated to get it to the stage here where, we seem to be getting to something here that people are comfortable with. So I just want to say for the process, thank you for kind of looking at these pieces and then getting us to a point here where at least the conversations that I've heard and the dynamics that people have been moving towards seems to be pretty positive. So thank you again. Just want to commend everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Does anybody else from the board wish to be heard on this?
I will, since I'm going to vote. This is Tony. I'm going to vote no on this. I'm totally in favor of safe streets. I bike, I run, I love it. And I spent a lot of time with the plan. I just think it's a bad plan. And there's one fundamental issue that just kind of dawned on me after looking at it for the last 3 months. It's putting traffic on streets that are busy already. And I think that's a fundamental problem in keeping bicyclists and cars separated. I think the plan should have addressed cycling on quiet streets and putting bikes where cars are not. That's just one fundamental problem. The other fundamental problem is that basically 80 to 90% of the fixes will never happen because of the loss of parking. I think a little bit more creativity could have gone into ways to not urbanize Montclair. There's a lot of streets that give me the impression that the writers of the plan had a more urban perspective. Anyway, so that's why I'm voting no.
I'm sorry, Tony, I don't understand your last comment about an urban perspective. You
look at typology 3. Typology 3, I believe, is North Mountain. every one of the typologies for North Mountain involve removal of parking. There's also some designs that remove sidewalks and put a two-way bike lane in replacement of a sidewalk. I mean, who would think of that? I've never seen that before. There's a lot of things in here that are puzzling to me. But if I go back to one reason, I think that you can get a lot more done for less money if you can create a great north-south route that doesn't involve Grove. You could have Park, and you have Fullerton wasn't addressed. That's a relatively low traffic street where you could address it. So I think fundamentally, if you separate the cars and the bikes, it would be better. This plan puts them together. But that's just me.
But don't you think, Tony, it's just offering, that was my big complaint about the plan when I first looked at it too. It seemed like they focused on all the busiest streets and the streets that had commercial spaces, which may have to give up their on-street parking. But
Yeah.
I think that the intent of it is just to throw out there different options, different viewpoints, different ways of doing this without actually giving a roadmap, so to speak, as to what they want to do. So that's what persuaded me that it's good to have the option. Someone else is going to look at this and they're going to decide, or they're going to suggest this is the street that the bike should go on. And maybe it's someone who sees it from your point of view. Let's put it on all these minor.
Well, I agree. I think that's a really valid viewpoint. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's, Ms. Lockman, that's exactly how I felt. And, I've expressed my concerns with some of the designs, and I would say the majority of the design options for the different typologies, I don't think they fit on the streets that were highlighted in the plan. But, as you mentioned, I think what, convinced me to support moving this forward to the hearing tonight is having this work as a design guide. Here are some options. Maybe the typologies aren't correct. Maybe the streets that are named are not correct. And, there are probably some better routes that we can implement some of these, as Mr. Ian Wally was saying. And I think that's, what led me to say, yeah, we should have this hearing tonight and move forward with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I always felt that this was a design guidelines, and that someone would have to be hired to go in and analyze this block by block, and it's not us.
Right.
But other people to do this. But this is the constraints that we're saying, well, you can do this, and you can do this, and you do this, and you do this. And let it go with that.
Right. I would agree with that, Steve, and like we said earlier on, this is a design guide. It's all about ideas. Every street in our town is so unique, so different, that everything has to be looked at individually. And this is a really good start. I also want to say that I'm very pleased that, as much as I have heard from constituents and the public in support of this, I've also heard from stores and restaurants that are concerned of losing parking in front of or nearby their establishments. And I'm glad that in this, we have there under the street design guide, the 3 words, and parking considerations. That's very important to me and to our township. So I'm very pleased with this. Thank you.
Anyone else from the board wish to be heard?
So, I think it comes as no surprise to anyone. I'm, certainly in favor of the amendment. And as you all know, from the first time that we looked at this a couple years ago, what we really see here are, I think, incredible improvements to pedestrian safety, which is very positive. And everything that's in the guide is really just a menu of options. And this truly is a design guide. So I know I've even had conversations with people confusing this to, oh, this is, a proposal of what will go into effect. And truly, these are just options and a guide, a menu to select from that could then potentially inform further investigation, which may even lead to a proposal, which may, lead to funding. But this is far, far preliminary to any of that coming on down the road. And so, you know, I think as a menu of options and design guide, you know, we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the very great already. So I think this really is the right step for us to move forward on. And I look forward to hearing from the public as well.
And the other thing I might add to that is that I don't believe that the plan, the master plan, makes it an exclusive guide. So it doesn't
Right.
rule out other ideas, but it does make it clear that whenever we're considering, and whatever we're considering, you have to take into account the real life conditions that are going to be impacted, and that has to be an active part of the consideration in whatever is finalized.
I just did want to make one last point. One of the things that concerned me early on was if you're going to have designated bike lanes, which in some of the plan, that's what seems to be an option, I believe that the town has to make sure that they maintain the streets. You can't have bike lanes with potholes. And that to me is not something at times that we've gotten much better at it, but that would need to be a focus to make sure if we're having designated bike lanes that they are maintained, because I was concerned about liability issues. If you have bike lanes and you're not maintaining them and someone goes in a pothole and goes out in front of a car, the town's going to have a problem. So I think there's a mandate for the town to make sure that they maintain any kind of street improvements that they do that encourages and offers bicyclists the chance to use these lanes. So I just want to go say that.
All right. Anyone else from the board want to comment? Okay, if not, then can we open it up to the public?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. This is Ian Kerr calling in support of the Safe Streets Amendment. I'm a resident of Montclair. I've been here for a decade. I work at Montclair State University, where I teach around innovation, urban ecology, and placemaking, amongst other things. And I mention that because I cycle year-round. And so I think the first thing to say about Montclair is it's an ideal place to cycle. The environment is great for cycling. And many of the places that have the highest level of cycling are in climates that are, you know, further in the northern hemisphere, whether it's Denmark or Sweden. So I think it's really important to not imagine that Montclair isn't a place where cycling is ideal and central to the possibilities. The second thing to say is, like, we can't frame this argument in terms of things like loss of parking, loss of pedestrian walkways. If we look at this systemically and holistically, we have given far too much real estate to things like parking and cars. the quality of life and the very possibility of our urban fabric is diminished by that, whether it's for businesses, that pedestrians, cyclists, and others who aren't relying on parking are fundamental to businesses and fundamental to the well-being of our neighborhoods. The other thing I think that's really important to consider here is equity. Many of the people who work in these businesses, restaurants and what have you, are people who cycle from elsewhere. It's not a town of recreational cyclists only. It's for people working here. And I think Safe Streets is fundamentally about equity. It's fundamentally about justice for all scales of labor. It's about ecology. It is about business, and it's writing the balance between all of these things. And it's long overdue that we think of Montclair as an integrated system of modes of transportation that fundamentally focus on quality of life. So public transportation, walking, cycling, and that these aren't mere recreational activities. And we have to see that holistically. The last couple things to say is that obviously this is a design guide. That's very clear. It's not written in stone. Questions about parking and business, I think these are moot. There's been so many studies, both in the United States and internationally, about how businesses benefit from cycling and cycling lanes and the quality of life brought on by better pedestrian streets. Questions like potholes, the city already has to deal with that. I deal with potholes every day biking. This isn't going to change when you have a cycling lane. So I think we need to really move to adopt this plan as a baseline, and we really need to go forward from there to think about Safe Streets as making a place that's worth living at the scale of equity, business, ecology, and just beauty. And that it's hard to imagine that anyone would be against such a broad guideline in the 21st century.
Mr. Kurt, would you provide your address for the record, and for future callers as well, if you could identify your name and address, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I live on 16 Trinity Place.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. This is Paul Mikowitz. I live at 7 Van Vleck. And I would like to say that very much in support of this plan. And I come at it with another perspective, and that is from a community health standpoint. I've been working with the YMCA for 40 years, and health metrics have only gone down, down, down. Health is worse, and it's continuing to get worse. And I am convinced that it's not going to get better by people joining a gym, joining the Y, and exercising. They need to have activity, active transportation, simple biking and walking built into their day. So the healthy choice is the easy choice and not nearly as difficult as it is now. I am a bike commuter, and I could tell you the biggest danger is not texting, not distracted driving. It's people in a rush. And, Stephanie Agnezzo pointed out the enforcement is not going to do it. We need engineering to slow people down and everyone just has to go a little slower, and they'll still get there. The difference is seconds, and it is extremely unnerving for many, many people. There's so many people I talk to that would love to ride their bike, but they're scared, simply scared. I, for better or worse, am part of that 1%, and I'll ride just about anywhere. But most people don't fit in that, and we need to be addressing the needs of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. This is Cynthia Cox, and I live at 66 South Fullerton Avenue. And I've lived in town for about 12 years now. I walk almost everywhere as my location lends itself to that. I'm also a cyclist, and I joined the call tonight to voice my support for adoption of the plan. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Susan Craig. I reside at 10 Crestmont Road. I have lived in Montclair for over 40 years, but I'm calling. I'm a member of the board of the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, and our board is very much in favor of this plan. Anything that would calm streets and make it easier for everybody, not merely your older residents, but all citizens need to be able to walk and approach streets without worry of accident and being injured. One of our board members, in fact, had been injured in a direct confrontation with a car that felt they needed to beat a light and did not respect the intersection. That our member still, though the accident occurred over 2 years ago, is still attempting to convalesce and resume her normal activities. The measures that will provide engineering and make the streets calmer is one that we should all support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is your turn.
Sounded like somebody tried to speak.
Taking a pass.
Yeah, and I heard a few words, but not a complete sentence.
I think I heard taking a pass.
Yeah. That line is open. If that caller would enter a comment, if they're trying to be heard and they're not being heard, if they could enter a comment and so that we could come back to you and try again. And yes, we can move on to the next.
Hi, yeah, the name's Jacob Neiman, 8 Club Street in Montclair, obviously. I wanted to show my support for the plan. I think it's really important for folks to recognize both that bikers and walkers engage in commerce too. It's not just folks who park who are providing these businesses with money and people and coming in the door. And also with regards to the idea that we should move bike lanes to quieter streets. Quieter streets are quieter for a reason. They're not the ones that get you to where you need to go. Busy streets are popular because they're efficient at moving people, and we shouldn't neglect bikes from those. Bikes or other forms of transportation. If we were to make those inaccessible to bikers, we'd have less people biking because you wouldn't be able to get where you needed to go as efficiently. It's also really important for us to remember that the streets are ours and not the cars, and we really shouldn't put them ahead of people who are just trying to live their lives in a safe and healthy manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, this is Denise Ford, Sourdough resident at 8 Highmont Terrace in Montclair, and also business owner in Montclair and a parent in Montclair. I'm calling in support of the plan. My main role as a mother, my son, my teenage son, rides his bike around town. He's a high schooler, and I will feel a lot better, as I'm sure other parents, knowing that the streets are actually designed for safe bike riding. I wish I had more time or energy to bike, and I do own a bike, and I think I'd also feel more comfortable using it more, which is a more healthier route of traveling anyway. If the streets were safer, I don't think it's good. Some people now are having to ride their bikes on the sidewalks because they feel the sidewalk is safer. Well, we know that's really not the best solution because now you're taking up space from pedestrians. So I believe there needs to be a solution, and I'm in full support of the plan in front of you, and hope that the board considers that and finally does the right thing and approves it so that we can all be safe in Montclair, whether we're walking, driving, or bike riding. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Petya Morozov, and I'm calling from 16 Trinity Place in Montclair. I am born and raised in Montclair. I am a local business owner as well as the founder of Design Shed. We've had the privilege of working with Bike Walk Montclair in a number of different events and endeavors. So I come with full support of the plan and hope that it will be implemented. I think as a design guideline, there's tremendous opportunities for these to be custom responses to each condition locally, and I think what Bike Walk Montclair has done is really build the capacity for our community to be engaged in the process. And so I feel like this will not just fall in the hands of a few people, but because of the support that they've been able to rally, that each community will feel that much more engaged and invested in the process when they know that they have alternatives that they can implement into their own backyards. We hope that the outcome of this will be one in which isn't just a sort of top-down approach, but really one that engages all levels of decision-making. And we really think that this design guideline allows that to happen in a really fundamental citizen action-oriented way. So thank you so much for supporting this plan.
All right, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Kate O'Connor. I live at 65 North Fullerton. And I think we can all agree that we want our town to be safe. And there's towns that are much safer than Montclair. And we have the resources to improve our town, and we're not doing it. So I think instead of being afraid to pass this plan, we have to be more afraid of what can happen if another person is hit on our streets. And since the pandemic has happened, there has been less cars driving, yet speed has increased. We've had a significant amount more people hit on foot and cyclists hit as well. So this is never going to get better, no matter what happens in our world. So we have to make these changes. And whether you're a cyclist or not, I think all of us walk in this town. That's why we love to live here. So we have to make these changes. And we have some of the highest pedestrian crash rates in Essex County, right up there with Newark and East Orange. So this really does affect us. And I think we owe it to our residents to provide a space where we can bike and walk safely. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's me. Can you hear me? This is Jean Lyons, and I live at 211 Montclair Avenue. So I'd like to take on what we're discussing tonight from a slightly different perspective. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, my perspective is more from the perspective of real estate in Montclair. I'm not a realtor, no, but I am a 29-year resident of the town. And when I was looking back then, 29 years ago, of course, I was thinking about price and taxes. But the other thing I was thinking about is, can I walk places in this town I'm considering moving to? Not, can I park in this town that I'm considering moving to? I wanted to be able to walk, and I think that's something that people moving into town now are still asking. And here I am 29 years later as an empty nester trying to decide, do I stay in Montclair or not? Well, guess what? Same questions are on my mind. Taxes? Yeah, okay, that's kind of in the down column, but can I walk places? And now, as I've aged, I'm more and more interested in, can I walk and bike to places safely? I had a near collision. Yes, I'm maybe not the 1%, but I'm maybe the 20%. I will bike most places. I had a near collision recently with a car that was speeding, and I fell off my bike, and I did hurt myself, not terribly. I am convinced that that near collision would not have happened if we had a safer, planned, well-designed infrastructure that would have stopped that near collision from happening. So I just want to wrap up by saying, please, please, I urge you to adopt this plan. It's going to continue to encourage the diversity in our town that we all value so much, especially by persuading seniors to stay and not to go. Please, let's get this plan off the shelf and pass it for once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Corrigan, and I live at 52 Harbor Street here in Montclair. Is everyone hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my concern, I'm a parent of a teenager, and my neighbor had told me about this group that she had been part of called Drive with Care in Montclair. And so I participated in that last year prior to the pandemic. And I was participating mainly because I'm terrified to let my kid outside, because I really feel like every time she goes out, I'm like, is she going to come home? Because I really do feel like this town is so dangerous for teenagers and even younger to crossing the street, especially around the Bloomfield area where she likes to hang out with her friends, where I think a lot of children are crossing Bloomfield, which is, I don't know. I like cross my fingers every time she leaves the house, and I don't want to feel like that. I'd love to, so I'm in favor of this safe plan, and I hope you guys are too. So that's basically, I'm coming from a parent perspective, but also obviously everyone involved should be protected, whether you're 15 or 50 or 80. So I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is David Richardson. I live on. Hi, this is David Richardson. I live at 42 Nishawane Road in Montclair. I'm calling to support the Safe Streets Plan, and the reason being is, as a father of 2 young children, I would love to let them ride their bikes to school, a friend's house, the park, the pool, to soccer practice, to dance class, and even to the store. But I just won't do it. I am scared to death that they will get hurt or even killed by a driver. Life wasn't always like this. We need to adopt and implement the Safe Streets Plan to make our streets safe again. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Yes, this is William Scott. Can you hear me? Yes. Again, William Scott, I'm a resident of Montclair for 71 years. And I currently live across the street from Nishawane School. I would definitely support the Safe Streets plan as a guide. But we absolutely would have to take a hard look on how we would implement safe streets around all our public schools if we would allow our children to ride their bikes to school. They would be competing with the everyday drop-off frenzy that all the public schools experience first thing in the morning, in the afternoon, and after-school programs. It is the scariest thing that I've experienced living across the street from Nishawane School for 33 years. That I would barely myself as an adult walk across the street, more or less to see a child walk up the streets or bicycle up the streets to Nishawane School and Nishawane Park. It is extremely dangerous. So I think that there's a level of enforcement that has always been a problem. I know the police department has always tried to enforce the guidelines for parking around the schools during drop-off period of times, but it is an unmanageable process, and building a safe streets component for our public schools in that plan would be critical. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. My name is Dave Lusberg. I'm a Montclair business owner. My business is at 507 Bloomfield Avenue. I was also a resident of Montclair for 15 years, and I also happen to be an urban designer that specializes in street design and things like this. And that was one of the things that attracted me to Montclair, actually. And so I moved to Montclair in 2001, and this type of conversation was rare at that time. In, I think, 2008 or 2009, the Complete Streets policy was adopted. And at that point, that was innovative. We were a leader at that point. Today, this type of policy, this type of implementation plan is imperative. It's no longer innovative. 11 years later, to be discussing whether or not we should be adopting an implementation plan for a complete streets policy that was adopted 11 years ago I'm glad we're doing it, but it's 11 years later. You know, this should be adopted without question. The question about parking, we work with many towns throughout New Jersey, And when we give the option to lose a parking space to gain outdoor seating for a restaurant, it was questionable. The towns that have taken advantage of that, as you can imagine, particularly during COVID, are thriving. So for every single reason possible that everyone has listed so far, from quality of life to safety to business retention to property values, I believe this policy should be adopted without question, and I strongly encourage the board to do that. And kudos to everyone who's been involved and gotten it this far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, great. This is Alex Kent. I live at 119 Essex Avenue. I lived in Montclair for 29 years, and I'm calling to support the SAFE plan. I echo everything Lieutenant Ignazzo said. I think she covered it very, very well. But I personally am not really a biker. I'm more a walker and a runner. And so I certainly traverse the whole town on foot often. And I am so aware of how poorly drivers pay attention to pedestrians. And I know that a pedestrian in Montclair is hit by a vehicle approximately once a week, badly enough to be sent to the hospital. That's what all the statistics have shown over the past, 10 years in Montclair. So it's really serious, and probably most of us know someone who's been hit by a car while walking around the town. And also the SAFE program or guide, as everyone has been mentioning, it's not a mandate, it's just a guide, and it covers all the types of roads in town, from like the busiest ones like Bloomfield Avenue, the highly trafficked ones are one category, like all the way down to the very quiet side streets. And for each type of roadway, there is a variety of plans, and you could be very extreme and put in, just one lane of traffic and 2 lanes of bike lanes, or you could just do a much smaller thing. It just depends on what the township engineer would like to do in that particular situation at that particular time. So it's not tying anybody's hands or forcing the town to do anything that the township engineer and the town council is not willing to do. So it is not a radical plan. And as Dave said, so many other towns are doing this. Like, we've been left behind, really. Even though we were one of the first people to adopt complete streets, we are now behind so many other towns in New Jersey and our area. And I know we consider ourselves a progressive town, and in this case, we really have fallen short. So I hope that these engineering fixes will make a big difference, because, as Lieutenant Ignazzo said, enforcement, education do a lot, but the police cannot be on every corner. And engineering makes a huge difference, because when you change the streets, then the drivers just slow down because they have to, because the streets are narrower, or there's other aspects that cause the drivers to go more slowly and make the pedestrians more safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Yakabellis, member of the Township Council. First, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to comment tonight. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the work that the previous council, the township staff, county, state officials, community leaders, subject matter experts have all contributed to developing this plan in the first place. I also want to say thank you to each of you on the board. I watch these meetings fairly often, and I appreciate how seriously you take your roles and process, always being diligent and caring so much about good design. We're really lucky to have your service, so thank you. I wanted to call in tonight to convey my personal thoughts, but also those of many of the Montclair residents who have raised this issue with me, both during the campaign and my short time in office as well. I've heard from constituents in every ward, from every walk of life. I won't go into deep detail, considering that there's already a lot of testimony tonight. But what I'll say is this issue, particularly the bike piece, is about putting the horse really back in front of the cart. Parents, children, employees, commuters are already riding their bikes on our streets and sidewalks. This isn't about trying to create infrastructure to encourage that behavior. This is about trying to create infrastructure to safeguard that behavior. And fundamentally, that is what this is all about, safety. using the power of smart design to build safety into our streetscape and protect the most vulnerable. You might have seen the op-ed that I wrote last week, and accompanying that was a photo that I took of a mother and a child trying to navigate up the hill of one of the town's busiest roads. I snapped the photo back in the spring, and in that picture, the mother is riding on the exterior while her child is on the interior, both with their helmets on, doing the right thing, following the law. And what struck me was her hand was on her child's back, presumably guiding the child, but also keeping that child safe. What came to me in that moment was a sense of, my gosh, we need to do more to have both of their backs. They were following the law, they were doing their best, but that's not enough if there isn't practical infrastructure to support them. Fundamentally, I really believe the inclusion of this plan will truly help our government unlock investment opportunities and make good safety-first infrastructure decisions going forward. I also strongly believe that the type of infrastructure that this plan suggests offers us the opportunity to support a greater sense of community and connection, both literally and figuratively. And to address a political misconception, for me, this is more about solving for dangerous crossings and less about putting bike lanes on quieter residential streets or eliminating parking. No reasonable person I know is advocating for less parking. I strongly believe that we have the space to address all of our needs, parking, biking, walking, and more, without compromising any of them. It really comes down to smart design, and this plan offers a start. Again, thank you all for your thoughtful and meticulous consideration of this plan, for the mayor and his progressive leadership over the years, for Councilor Schlager for her leadership on this issue, and to all of you. So thank you, and thanks everybody calling in.
Thank you.
Hello. Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Ben Rich. I'm co-chair of the Environmental Commission, and I live at 27 James Street and have lived here for 11 years. The Montclair Environmental Commission has been supportive of Safe Complete Streets initiative since the beginning and appreciates the accomplishments to date, especially those on South Park Street, the bike lanes, and the seasonal pop-up parklets like the one on Montclair Avenue. Having streets designed with cyclists in mind will be important, especially when the proposed greenway becomes a reality. It will reduce local pollution from tailpipes and improve health of residents by encouraging cycling and walking. As stated in the proposal, the power of a complete streets policy to change the roadway environment and positively impact mobility for all users depends upon the quality of its implementation strategy and execution. The MEC is coming before you this evening to reiterate our support for 3 specific components of this proposal: a program of education and engagement that explains the Complete Streets policy and answers questions, using the Complete Streets checklist similar to those within the Essex County Complete Streets Implementation Plan, inclusion and fair stakeholder representation of the Complete Streets implementation with performance standards for capital projects, maintenance and operational procedures, and transparency and accountability. Importantly, MEC and our growing network of membership is a ready and willing partner to assist with the proposal as put forth here from start to finish. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me? Great. Yeah, my name is Peter Holm. My address is 182 Christopher Street. A few years ago, my spouse and I had decided to move. We were looking for a new home. And one of the main reasons that we chose Montclair was that it was a community where we could live our daily lives without having to rely on a car. We wanted to be able to walk to a train station, to go to work every day, in the evenings, on weekends. We wanted to be able to walk or ride our bikes or take a quick transit ride to local restaurants and shops and other venues. And to us, that kind of walkable, connected community that gives people good options other than having to drive everywhere and the parking was extremely appealing and one of our top priorities. So when we were considering our options, I did my research. I actually read an updated, I read the updated land use and circulation element of the master plan. I am that type of person, which this board had just approved in 2017. And although that element cataloged a host of challenges, I was really impressed that Montclair seemed to have a plan that actually address and improve those issues. So the master plan already in force makes it clear that, quote, at the core of many of the township's land use and circulation issues is a lack of adequate service for pedestrians, cyclists, and transit users, unquote. And it goes on to note that reliance on cars as a dominant mode of travel limits community sustainability, limits residential diversity, makes it hard for residents to age in place, adversely impacts human health, and places a heavy burden on the environment. And all these issues are exactly what all the callers have been talking about. The SAFE plan under consideration tonight, which is almost 4 years later, was commissioned and developed in direct response to these deficiencies and problems, and incorporating it into the master plan would help the township move forward on addressing them in practical, thoughtful, and balanced ways. The SAFE plan provides expert guidelines and options to help the township expand accessibility, improve the safety of our streets and sidewalks, provide more options to get around town and support local business, and to make Montclair a more sustainable and livable place. The design guide doesn't compel any particular changes, but as I think Planning Director Talley noted at a previous meeting, adopting it would also open up new opportunities to attract grants and provide funding for some of the much needed infrastructural improvements. So I strongly support approval of the proposed amendment, and I urge the board to do so. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was old. That was from the earlier round.
Good evening. My name is Zena Floyd. I am a resident, a business owner, and I also represent the village. And I have to thank the township, the board, as well as our mayor for considering the SAFE plan because it is essential. I mean, I know that we have different districts that have different needs, but Orange Road and our business district is a county road, and we get buses and cars that drive through there frequently at above 35 miles per hour, including the buses, and cyclists that love to bicycle on Orange Road. They come from the beginning of where Montclair starts and they take it into town. And it's cringeworthy to watch how they have to avoid the vehicles. They know the rules, they know how to ride their bicycles, their cyclists, but the commuters and the drivers do not. And though I do believe that it has to have more work done into it, the excellent guideline, we obviously have to take the legalities for the township, but also we have to take into consideration the safety of our cyclists and walkers. So I just want to say thank you, and I wanted to make sure that you all understood that the South End Business District is in full support of the safety plan, with obviously adjustments being made, but we thank you very much for the consideration this evening, and I thank you as well for the safety of our community. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. David Shaw, I live at 160 Cooper Avenue. That address is important. For just my anecdote, I have a lot of anecdotes and a lot of things that I could say. I'll just say that I was put in the hospital earlier this summer, close passed by a driver, and I was okay. I was very fortunate. But what I really wanted to say tonight, just to sort of provide a more memorable anecdote, is in addition to my wife and children, I like bikes and I like ice cream. And the reason that I say that is because we have a couple of several great options when it comes to ice cream in Montclair. One of which is gelato on Bloomfield Avenue. We are never going to ride bikes down to gelato on Bloomfield Avenue. We're going to walk from Cooper Avenue to Applegate. my wife, my children, and I in the summertime. Because my wife regards it as far too dangerous to ride bikes down to Bloomfield Avenue. So that's Gelato's loss, obviously. That's Gelato's loss, obviously. But it's also Bear Burger's loss. Because we're going to flip a burger in the backyard and then we're going to walk to Applegate rather than getting on bikes and going to Bear Burger and going to Gelati and spending the afternoon on Bloomfield Avenue. And every time we make that choice, it's tax dollars that are not going in the town's coffers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is James Cotter. I live at 21 Clover Hill Place. As a member of my neighborhood association, I have spoken in front of this board often about pedestrian safety, traffic calming, and the need for our planning process to be responsive to the needs of our children, our families, and our neighborhoods. Tonight, I ask the planning board to support the adoption of the SAFE plan into the master plan. The SAFE plan is the result of the dedication, hard work, and vision of a cross-section of Montclairians with the goal of making our community a more equitable, sustainable, and safer place to live. The inclusion of the SAFE plan into our master plan will give planners, developers, engineers, and public officials tools and ideas for transportation options that are aligned with the needs of pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers. This pandemic has given us a rare opportunity to reimagine the possibilities of our public spaces. When we emerge from this state of suspended animation, we will need to look at all the tools at our disposal to reinvigorate the health, infrastructure, accessibility, and economic viability of Montclair. The SAFE plan gives us such a framework. We have the opportunity to make Montclair a more livable and vibrant community. We are all pedestrians, we are all cyclists, and we are all drivers. It's time to prioritize ways we can share our streets together. I hope you will fully support this initiative and the vision it promises for the future of Montclair. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Great, thanks very much. My name is Carl Chastain. I live at 35 Dodd Street in Montclair. I'm a small business owner, and I'm currently building out my second retail location, which will be here in town at 113 Grove Street. And I can tell you that from a business operations perspective, I greatly value safe streets. Many of my staff are car-free, and actually, as a matter of fact, everyone I currently employ either bikes or skateboards to work. So it's very important to my operation that I can trust that my employees have a safe way to get there. From a revenue perspective, I very much value the increased activity and foot traffic that you find on safe streets. So at my existing location, which is actually in Jersey City, extensive pedestrian and bike safety measures have already been built, which has led to a reduction in on-street parking. That is a fact. But foot traffic and just the overall liveliness of street life has noticeably increased and has benefited us financially. On a personal note, my son learned to ride his bike during the beginning of the pandemic shutdown, and we would regularly go out around town to the different parking lots which were suddenly just wide open because businesses were closed. And we found that families from all over Montclair, Glen Ridge, Bloomfield were all gravitating towards these places because they're a safe spot for their kids to ride their bike, to ride their scooters, just get out and do that. So anecdotally, I feel that there is a lot of demand for safe infrastructure for biking, walking, scooting, the like. So all of that said, I urge the planning board to please adopt the safe plan into Montclair's master plan. And thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Hi, you can skip me. I already commented. I just had to call back in. Sorry.
Hi, this is Jackie Moroz. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes. I'm the acting chair of the Pedestrian Safety Advisory Committee for the town. And so we have been meeting, we stopped meeting when the pandemic started, but I just wanted to let you know that we wholeheartedly support the adoption of the SAFE plan for our town. We believe it's the safest way to go for pedestrians and cyclists. And on a personal note, I just wanted to say I live on Harvard Street and I've been here for 20 years. And the reason that I got involved with the Pedestrian Safety Committee is because I have 3 kids in town and they were riding their bikes to school and walking to school. And I was just deathly afraid that they were going to get hit by a car. So I really believe in the safety of this plan and want to just show my support for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me okay? Hi, John Sullivan, 19 Euclid Place, Montclair, also calling on behalf as president of Bike Walk Montclair and our entire board. I just want to read a couple words tonight, and I wanted to shout out to every single person who's called in. Everything that I'm about to say has already been echoed, and it was our goal tonight to show that this was not just a Bike Walk Montclair thing as some niche special interest group. This is Montclair. This is the community of Montclair reaching out to you and saying that we are long overdue to pass this. So here are a couple words. Neighborhoods and communities shape our lives. They are where we wake up each morning and go to work each day, where our children learn and grow, and where we spend time with our friends and family. Where we live can influence our health, our economic potential, and our all-around livability. Every single person in America, no matter their age, ability, income, or race, deserves the option to live somewhere where there's convenient, beautiful, and safe networks of transport. By far, our largest component of public space is our streets and our sidewalks, the network that connects us all. There has been movement across the country for almost 2 decades known as the Complete Streets Movement. And there's a growing body of data that details a direct correlation between how complete our streets are and the overall quality of life. As we sit here tonight in Montclair, our streets are very, very, and frustratingly incomplete. And until they are, pedestrians and people on bikes and residents and visitors will continue to suffer physically, socially, economically, and psychologically. So here we are tonight, hopefully to finally adopt this plan. Should I call it the design guide, this non-mandated menu of options into our master plan as a first step towards hopefully catching up to where the rest of our surrounding communities are. I'd like to talk for 2 reasons why this is good in general and why this is great for Montclair specifically. The Montclair Safe Plan is an economic plan. By making it easier to walk, bike, or take transit to downtowns, shopping centers, and businesses, there is a growing number of studies and data from around the nation that document the economic benefits of what it means to be able to get by foot and by bike into walkable, bikeable places with attractive streetscapes and places where people want to linger rather than to park their car, get in, and get out. The Montclair Safe Plan is an equity plan. Fair and equitable distribution of transportation investments is a principle of all complete streets around the country. All users of transportation systems are intended to benefit from this plan. Ethnically, for those who choose transportation choices are limited by socioeconomic circumstances or location. Pedestrian and bicycling access to essential services in the community destinations such as hospitals, health clinics, senior centers, schools, employment centers, bus routes, and transit stops can be life-changing. This Montclair Safe Plan is an environmental plan. Creating an inviting and comfortable walking and biking environment reduces car travel and carbon dioxide emissions. Creating an inviting and comfortable walking and bicycling environment with green infrastructure such as street trees, rain gardens, provide shade, and remove pollutants from the air, minimizing flooding in streets and sidewalks that interfere with things that discourage walking and bicycling. Finally, the Montclair Safe Plan is a health and safety plan. Historically, transportation decision-making has prioritized the movement of cars, trucks, and other motorized vehicles. This has led to a transportation system that often lacks design features and facilities that walking and biking need, and are easily excellent ways to maintain an active lifestyle. Inactivity is a factor of many chronic diseases, including diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and stroke. Complete streets make it possible for people to routinely choose walking, bicycling, and transit to access community destinations, such as supermarkets, bus stops, transit stations, leading to greater physical activity. What I just read are reasons why complete streets are beneficial for any town, in any place. But I would also like to spend a minute on why Montclair, why the Safe Streets Plan here. Montclair is a town that identifies as a place, quote unquote, where the city meets the suburb, a place trying to be two things at once. It is inviting thousands to live, work, shop, play, and dine here, but it is designed almost exclusively around the movement and storage of the automobile. This sets up a conflict. This sets up the streets that are designed to prioritize cars over people, and what we live in is a public realm in constant conflict. Montclair averages over 45 crashes per year with pedestrians, often resulting in serious injuries and fatalities. Montclair was originally designed around public transportation with tight-knit, dense neighborhoods and walkable, bikeable villages. How can we sit here in a town that neglects this and plans around the car? We have 1/3 of our Montclair High School students getting to school not by car, walk, bike. Despite the ever-increasing of the senior citizens in our town and aging in Montclair, citing pedestrian safety and traffic calming as a top concern. Despite Montclair having 12 times the average of people commuting than any other town in our neighboring area, meaning they're getting there by foot and by bike. Despite all this, the plan has sat for 4 years and 11 years since Montclair first adopted the Complete Streets policy in 2009. Despite an ongoing effort of some to reframe it as such, this plan is not a bike plan. This plan is not an anti-parking plan. We are not a niche group. As we have heard from Montclair's member after member after member tonight on calls, we see a broad and wide support that this plan has. We are not a niche group. We are Montclair. We are aging in Montclair. We are the Montclair Police Department. We are the Montclair Education Department. We are a community of environmentalists, traffic safety advocates, designers, artists, public safety officials, teachers, coaches, equity proponents, walking enthusiasts, pedestrians, urbanists, gardenists, cyclers, placemakers, rollers, skaters, daycare teachers, parents, grandparents, children, and after-school directors, street musicians, everyone else I could list here forever. You know why we are that? Because streets are for everyone, which is what this plan is. It is far past time to stop only defining traffic and traffic studies as those who are behind the wheel of automobiles. Our town was brilliantly designed hundreds of years ago around wonderfully unique walkable, bikeable villages. We appreciate working with the planning board over the years, but it is far past time to get started on where we need to be to have Montclair live up to its full potential and make it the livable, walkable, bikeable place it was designed to be. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anybody speak. So my name is Bill Feeney. I'm calling from, I live at 20 Southern Terrace in Montclair. This year, because of the pandemic, we saw a dramatic decrease in cars on roadways. And as the cars disappeared, our residents finally felt safe enough to go for a bike or a walk with their families. And to me, that shows that there is demand for biking and walking, but that residents choose not to bike or walk because they feel unsafe sharing the road as they are with cars now. We're a very progressive town who holds strong values such as environmentalism, protecting the most vulnerable, as well as economic and social equality for all people. If we want to live up to our values, we need to start thinking about everyone who lives or works here, including the elderly, disabled, the children who are too young to drive, our economically disadvantaged workers, such as those who work in our amazing restaurants, or those who simply choose to walk, bike, or take public transportation or use a variety of all three modes. Voting to approve this document, the master plan, is not by any means the be-all, end-all, and it's not even an exhaustive list of all the designs that we could use, as was stated by this board earlier tonight. The SAFE plan is just a non-binding menu of options in which town officials and residents can use to help them think about how the streets can be redesigned to slow down cars and create a safer neighborhood. But mostly the SAFE plan is a symbol of how our town intends to develop into the future. The way I see it is the SAFE plan is a symbol to tell us whether or not we'll be a town of people or if we want to be a town of cars to drive through. I'm urging the planning board to adopt this document into our town's master plan so we can take our first steps since 2009, when we were the first in the state to adopt the complete streets policy to make our town for those policy making our town for those outside of windshield. Additionally, when you do so, I also urge a town council to act swiftly upon it and not to let this turn into another document that collects dust on our shelves. I look forward to tonight's vote, and I look forward to our town creating concrete solutions to be a safer, more comfortable, environmentally friendly, and pleasant neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Deborah Kagan. I live at 66 Beverly Road in Montclair. And I am very happy to hear the planning board discussing this plan as a design guide. I have testified before this board on several occasions in reference to this plan. I have biked and walked in Montclair for 31 years, and I'm the kind of person who bikes to do errands and goes to do shopping on my bike. So to me, to have safe access to the business district's part of the plan is very important. And I've spoken about the health aspects and the environmental aspects in the past about this plan. Today, I just want to talk about a implementation idea from the plan that could be used, I believe, that puts Montclair in perspective to what's going on in the area. I currently am working on the Essex Hudson Greenway project, Greenway which will run between Montclair and Jersey City. It's currently in the proposal, but we're moving very quickly, I believe, to what will be implementation within the next year. The Greenway will bring in people biking, walking, tourism from all parts of our region and all 8 towns that will go across. And where these greenways have been created in other parts of the country, it is very clear that they bring new economic stimulus and development to local towns. So Montclair will be a gateway to this incredible, iconic project for the region. And it raises the question of all these people that are going to be on the Greenway, biking and walking, that we want to come and spend money in our town. We have to provide safe access from that Greenway to the center of our town. So to me, this is a concrete example of how we can take a look at this guide design to address how we can make the streets safer, access for biking and walking from our town center to this incredible project, so that we can bring in new economic stimulus, new money to the town. And this has been shown across the country that where that kind of access is provided safely, people will come. So to me, being able to pass this as part of the master plan gives us an incredible resource to go ahead and implement specifically after conversations with all the right agencies and people in the neighborhood, to make access points between the Greenway and the center of town a welcoming place for people that are coming to our town. So I'm very excited to hear that it's being reviewed and viewed as a design guide with something to have a resource and options for us to look at. And I'm very excited and hope that you all will adopt this as part of the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Scott Ketty, 416 Valley Road. I think the comments people have made are fabulous, and I'm not going to reiterate them. I'm going to put a little bit of a twist and food for thought. I'll go on the economics that the last speaker spoke about. Prior to this call, I did a quick 1-minute Google search, and in the 4 years since this plan came about, the city of Newark, which I would not use as a benchmark for anything, implemented some amazing cycling paths that are bright green. You can see them. In fact, we deviated when I did an airport run to pick my dad coming in from out of country. Their property values have gone up 87% pre-COVID, which is phenomenal. So not only will it drive business, this will drive residential housing prices up, which I'm sure every single resident would like, whether they drive, walk, crawl, etc. The other thing, I think it was Ms. Lyons who talked about safety and accidents, and a few other folks. The per capita accident and death rate in our town is off the charts. The mayor of Toronto said they have a crisis with deaths. We are 3,000% worse with deaths in Montclair than a city of, I think it's 3 million now. So I would draw that to attention, and then I would parlay that back to the member who mentioned liability with potholes. If we sit and do nothing, the town must surely be even more liable, given all the comments this evening. I'm not an attorney, but boy, I just begging for a lawsuit if we do nothing. That doesn't mean, we can sit and do nothing. I believe we would be liable. And I would really like to see change so that our kids, it can be safer. And lastly, my daughter was actually going to speak. She's fast asleep, so I'll play.
Hi, my name's Olivia, and I'm 9 years old, and I would really like for there to be bike paths so that we can ride safely. And why I would like the bike paths is because when we're riding, a lot of cars almost run us over, and that's why I would really like some bike paths so we can be safe and ride safely.
And in closing, the one thing I would say is after 4 years, can we please, if we implement this, take a ready, fire, aim approach? Any change will be a good change, and thereafter we could pursue continuous improvement. Anything would be appreciated and respected, and you heard the words of my daughter, and I'll let her speak loudest for my family. Thanks. Have a good night.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, this is Councilman Bob Russo just calling in. I'd like to refer to what our Lieutenant Ignazzo said in her memo to you all. It's important that we certainly enforce and we educate, but more importantly than anything is that we engineer. I've seen some very good engineering in Asbury Park, Ocean Grove area recently at the shore along Main Street. I've seen it in Milburn The engineering I'm talking about is doing things to create a calming situation by having islands and having a change in our streetscape. So I'm asking that we pass this, we move ahead, we not delay any longer, and I'm just giving you my perspective on it as a council member for many years. It's long overdue. I hope we pass this, and I hope we move on, because we need to do that engineering component that's in this plan, and something that our Police Lieutenant Ignazo certainly pointed out in her memo. So I refer you to her memo, and I thank her for her recommendation to you. Good night. Thank you.
Meeting. That's me. All right, let's see. How do I do this? Oh, you can? Oh, great. Hold on 1 second. Hi, my name is Laura Torchio. I am a resident at 569 Upper Mountain Avenue. I would like to ditto Stephanie Ignazo, first of all, for that incredible letter, and all the people who called in tonight in support of the Safe and Complete Streets Plan. I would also like to mention the stormwater management conversation we had prior to this, and that the New Jersey Department of Transportation has an incredible green and complete and equitable streets guide that we can start to combine a lot of these ideas together. They don't have to be separate, so let's break down the silos. But basically, I'm calling in to say I would be grateful if the planning board would adopt and the town would implement the Montclair Safe Complete Streets Plan, and any policies that put people first on our streets over the movement and storage of cars. It's a priority that's long past due. I am not a cyclist. I am a person who lives in Montclair, raised a family, volunteered in the schools and the town, been a supporter of our history and our future, and often I get around town by bicycle to shop, to socialize, and to work. The label cyclist connotes recreation and sport, and oftentimes a fringe interest. Granted, sometimes I do bike for recreation and sport, but mostly it's a primary means of getting around our town in regular clothes, sometimes in a suit. Sadly, I've been honked at, shouted at, flashed, and physically pushed by aggressive drivers while following the law and practicing safe riding. It's a shame that the safest places to bike, sidewalks, parks, separated bike paths, are illegal or non-existent, and the legal places to bike, our streets, are the most unsafe. I put my life in danger every time I head out to buy a half-gallon of milk. I'd like to ask that as a first step, we stop labeling people as pedestrians and cyclists. These are people who walk, bike, drive, people of different ages and abilities, people who are civil servants, community champions, business owners, healthcare workers, students, elected officials, dishwashers, dog walkers, and retirees. Our streets make up 70 to 80% of this town's public space. Our streets are for people, not just for the cars we drive. Our streets are for coming to as well as moving through, and are essential to the life of Montclair. I've worked in the field of transportation planning for 30 years or more, and have dedicated countless volunteer hours providing my expertise to Montclair. I do this because I love this town and the people in it. Professionally, I work with communities all over the country on finding ways to balance people needs and traffic flow on their streets. In the 20-some years I have been volunteering with Montclair, we have debated the merits of complete streets, provided data, presented other community successes, shown public support, and brought in state and federal funding. Yet, here we are, still debating. This shouldn't be up for debate any longer. We already know that adoption and implementation of the SAFE plan will have no or nearly no reduction in parking. We already know the benefits to businesses from safe, walkable, bikeable communities. And above all, we already know this will reduce stress and improve public safety. So with this, I would just like to ask that, one, we get this plan off the shelf and adopt it into the master plan as a start, and definitely begin to implement some of the ideas in the Safe, Complete Streets plan. Second, I'd like to recommend that we have a Green and Complete Streets Advisory Committee to advise the Planning Board and Council going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. I'd like to move that we adopt the revisions as outlined, as what's showing on the screen, and that we move forward.
I second.
Okay, I'm going to call the roll. Okay. Vice Chair Brodock.
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Councillor Schlager.
Yes.
Ms. Willis.
Yes.
Mr. Rooney.
Yes.
Mr. Ian Wally.
No.
Ms. Lockman.
Yes.
And Mr. Gilmer.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for all the comments. I think this concludes our business for the evening.
There's one thing I'd like to add, payment of bills. I didn't include them in the packet, but I sent copies via email to the board members.
Yep.
And I reviewed the bills and I would move to approve them.
And I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Hey.
Well,
Thank you very much. Enjoy the snowstorm.
have a great holiday. Our next meeting's January 11th.
Right.
Wow.
Happy holiday. Happy New Year.
Yes. Same to all of you.
Safe.
Be safe, everyone.
Take care.
Be a nice holiday.
Okay,
Happy
good.
holidays.
See you in January.
Bye.
Good night.